What's up, all? James here from Party Time Brewing. Today we're going to brew a New England IPA. It's going to be the hoppiest, most complicated recipe I've ever tried, but we'll give it a go. It's already 7:30, so I'm probably going to be brewing right into the night, so I got to get right at her. So like, share, subscribe. Let's do this!
Party time brews. This song ain't no good, but we got nothing to lose. Party time brews. Here's another brewing clip. You can watch it if you choose.
Well, as per usual, you're going to need some water. I've brewed this 5 times and I can obviously confirm it needs water. I always use RO water from my filter. It takes a bit to gather, but it's free-ish. Set up your gear and wait for the strike water to heat up to 65 Celsius or 150 degrees Fahrenheit. While you're waiting for it to heat up, might as well prep the water profile with the beer salts. For this batch I went with about a 1:2 sulfate to chloride ratio in order to give a softer hop character. I'm not sure if I can tell the difference, but people much more learned than I recommend between a 1:2 and 1:3 ratio of sulfate to chloride, and it seems to have worked in all the 10 batches I've made. In this batch, I actually remembered to set up my Sparge water. I tend to miss that a lot and always end up having to run for the kettle at last minute to get the Sparge water heated up. This recipe features the largest grain bill that I've ever used in the Grainfather, a total of about 7.5 kilograms or 16.5 pounds. I used 3 kilograms of Pale and 2.25 kilograms of Pilsner for the base. I added 1 kilograms of flaked oats, which supposedly will add a silkier mouthfeel to the brew, and 1 kilogram of Wheat Malt, which contributes to a fuller body and foamier head. As usual, the best part of the process was milling the grain. This was the first batch that the hopper for my grain mill wouldn't hold it all in one go. When that's done, it's time for the mandatory grain grab, then off to the doughing. The more grain, the trickier the doughing, and I had difficulty on all 15 batches of this recipe that I've done. You can see here with the amount of initial strike water I had that it obviously wouldn't work. It looks like in the end it would have turned into a nice pile of cement that nothing would have flowed through. I even had to add a bonus liter or so of water to this batch to make up for the sticky mess. Once the grain was all set, I dialed it up for an hour-long mash and started measuring out the hops. I used 20 grams of Magnum for just a hint of bittering at the start of the boil. For the Flameout hops, I added 102 grams of Citra, 56 grams of Dorado, and 56 grams of Simcoe. All of the Whirlpool hops have grapefruit aromas, with the Citra and Simcoe focusing on the citrus flavors and the Dorado giving it a bit of tropical fruit flavor. In case you're wondering, Dorado is described as tropical fruit, pineapple, mango, aroma of pear, watermelon, stone fruit, and candy. Simcoe is bright citrus flavors with earthy undertones, aromas of grapefruit, pine, and herbs. And the Citra is, surprisingly, citrus, grapefruit, lime, tropical fruits with harsh bitterness. I know these hop facts from all the 20 batches I made of this. Definitely not the Yakima Valley Hops webpage. It was flowing pretty slow about halfway through the mash process, so I decided to give her a good little stir. And now for the slowest Sparge in the history of all my 25 batches of this I've made. It was so slow that I even decided to stir it up using my mash pedal and drill to hopefully remove any channels that may have formed while sparging. Eventually the Sparge finished and it went to a boil. I added the bittering additions and then remembered something about ascorbic acid. With NEIPAs, you want to minimize the oxidation, and ascorbic acid helps prevent this by eating up some of the free oxygen. For the rest of the hops, I decided that it might be best to add the rest in a bag. In the past 30 batches, the 200 grams of hops have proven to be a consistent clog hazard for the pump. Another thing to note is that with the bags, it's best to keep them away from the bottom if possible. I find that if the bag or hop spider is too close, it can lead to a bit of scorching. I've never tasted this in the beer, but it makes for a bit trickier cleaning job. After the hops have sat and warped for 15 minutes or so, pull the bag and squeeze all that sweet hoppy juice out of there. As a side note, if you're curious about hop burn, this would be a great time to test it out for yourself. I forgot to do this, but just put the bag up to your mouth and suck on it for a bit, and then report your results in the comments below. Party Time Brewing does not actually recommend doing this and will not be held liable for any damage or injury caused by sucking on big bags of bitter hoppy wort. Please be accountable and take responsibility for any actions that can lead to self-darwining. Next, cool the wort and fill up the fermenter. This is my first time working with the all-rounder and I was pretty happy, but it just sucks moving it and transporting it at the same time when you're working solo. For this batch, I didn't use anything fancy for the yeast since I just picked up a big brick of US 05. I measured out what would have been 2 packs or 23 grams and pitched it dry. Once that's in there, seal it up and give it a good shake to oxygenate the wort as much as possible. Probably could have done more, but that would be good, and I don't have an oxygen one, which would be ideal. So this works for now. Then I realized I forgot to drop in my ice spindle, so I opened it up again and dropped it in. 3-ish days later and I went in for the dry hopping. I didn't manage to set up anything that minimizes the oxygen, but here's what I did. Opened it, blasted some CO2 inside, dropped in the 200 grams of hops, more CO2, then waited way too long to keg it. I had the batch sitting on the hops for almost 2 weeks. Surprisingly, that didn't seem to negatively affect the taste of the batch. For a quick overview of the fermenting, here's a screenshot from my ice spindle tilt-type hydrometer. With the double batch of yeast, it fermented up very quickly and was moving toward terminal gravity after 3 days. Dropping in the hops messed up with the readings on the hydrometer, but it settled out after about another 2 days, and it was done.
And welcome back. I just took the NEIPA out of the fridge. She's a little bit cold pressed, still has its nice haziness. Whether or not we lost anything, who knows, but we'll find out in a minute. She looks good, she looks ready to go. I got a pre-sanitized keg here. I made up some weird fitting because I'm using pin lock and ball lock fittings, but let's hook it up and see how she goes.
At this point in time, I noticed I was out of CO2. I had a spare tank ready and began the transfer. The funny thing about my first attempt at the transfer is that when I removed the incoupler which I was using to vent the keg, I forgot to seat it when I started transferring. Half of this batch was transferred by increasing the pressure to almost 40 psi, which is way too much. Not surprisingly, when I realized my mistake, the rest of the batch transferred super fast.
That's it, she's kegged. Would have been a lot easier if I did it right. Would have taken a lot less time. I was wondering why it took so long. Ha! It's 3 in the morning. Maybe it's because I'm tired. Ha! Well, I poured the beer. It's time to give it a little bit of a taste. Might as well give it a smell first. It smells pretty citrusy. As you can see, the head retention isn't the greatest on there. Not that I'm really worried about that because it's going to get drank so fast, but the citrus smells right after pouring. It was a little bit stronger. It's gone away quite a bit, but still smells fantastic. Hazy. Still hazy. Give it a taste. That's a really good taste. Not very bitter. Has a great citrusy. I guess that's the only word I can describe it with because that's pretty much what all the hops that I used will give in this taste. And it's definitely, I'd say it's crushable, even though it's a 7.5, so you can crush it all day, but you won't last long. Yeah, I would make more of this. I will make more of this. Problem is, it's too damn expensive, but whatever. It's beer. We're trying to make good beer. Have a great day. Like, share, subscribe. Check out my other videos for more stuff. Just gonna take this. I don't know where to go. Oh. So good, I don't really want to down it, but don't really have an option otherwise here. You got places to be too, so. She's very good. Okay, one more. Yeah.
What'd you expect? Like the guy who's brewed this thing 327 times has the bandwidth to learn how to do a proper review? Come on!